Hello and welcome back to Relationship Remix. I am your host and guide, Ari Kardosh, and I am so excited to be here. Right now, I have the honor of welcoming one of the coolest souls on this Bali island, maybe in this planet. Welcome, Veronika. Veronika is many things on top of being a really amazing person and coach, and she runs this really cool program called Vulnerable as Fuck, or I think you just call it Vulnerable AF, but we know.
Those don't want to curse.
So welcome, Veronika. It's so good to see you. I know we're on the same island. We're in the same city almost, but it's nice to get to interact this way too and get to play around and show people what you are up to in this world. So thank you for being here on Relationship Remix. And I'm going to let you take it away with just telling us a little bit about who you are and what your journey has been to bring you here to this moment.
Thank you for introducing me, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this vulnerability in relationships. Yay. So for those who are listening right now, just type yes in the chat. Tell me you're here, tell me you're listening, tell me you're ready. And if you're listening, I just want you to tell me if you're ready to have more freedom in being yourself. And rate yourself on a scale of 1 through 10 if you are achieving that. If you feel like you're achieving freedom to be yourself. So while you're thinking about that and while it's percolating in your system, I'll just tell you a little bit about who I am. Even though Ari introduced me, but why I started talking about vulnerability and teaching vulnerability is not because I was always vulnerable. It's because I really struggled up until, I'm constantly practicing vulnerability every day, but 2.5 years ago, before I started Vulnerable AF, I really struggled with intimacy and communication and being vulnerable. So, I'm a connector, a facilitator, and a coach, and I've helped hundreds of high achieving leaders in being more vulnerable and brave in their life and in their relationships. So for the past 2.5 years, I've been teaching courses and leading over 100 in-person and online workshops that inspire leadership and vulnerability. So, you cut off a little bit. I was like, what? So, I'm the founder of Vulnerable AF, Vulnerable as Fuck. It's a global movement and event series that inspires vulnerability and creates brave spaces for permission and intimate conversations. So my commitment is to really dissolve the world's negative stigma about vulnerability. So at the end of this workshop or training, which this is usually like a 3-hour workshop, and I'm condensing it to 45 minutes. But at the end of this, you'll be able to use vulnerability as your greatest superpower. And I
love it.
Yeah. So, and I know I'm going to give it to Ari in a minute, but I talk about vulnerability because vulnerability is, there's this negative stigma about vulnerability that, vulnerability is a weakness. Vulnerability is just about crying all the time and processing your emotion every minute, right? But the truth is, we've been conditioned to believe that, conditioned to hold back, or conditioned to be like strong and powerful, right? And being strong and holding back and not speaking up is something we've been taught in order to hide. Or you should be nice. Don't say too much, right? And it's a conditioning that teaches us that vulnerability is an exposure of weakness. And vulnerability is risky, right? It is really scary. It is not easy to do, right? But
If you
having
practice,
courage,
it helps.
yeah, exactly. You have to practice it. And having the courage to be more vulnerable and has changed my life and my clients that I've worked with, and helping them be more authentic and having deeper relationships, even though it is scary.
Yes.
So
So good. And I am through, I just want to add personally, I know that the more vulnerable I am, the deeper the relationships I have with those around me, and the deeper the relationship I have with myself. It's like less walls with my own heart. It's so cool.
So cool. Yeah, it's like vulnerability. It's like it's peeling and taking off the layers. And actually, vulnerability is an invitation to your power, right? It's not this like forceful, like, I'm going to be vulnerable and do this thing, right? It's an invitation. It's actually an invitation to influence. It's an invitation to your softness. And there's a
I love that.
misconception. Yeah, like there's a misconception that vulnerability is makes you less powerful, right? Or it's a weakness, or there's misconception like, I can't, if I'm soft in my partnership, in my business, then, or in my at work, if I'm soft, people will take advantage of me, right? And unfortunately, yeah, there is that's possible, right? When you take the risk in sharing something really brave, or taking the risk in just simply being yourself, despite the judgments, despite what may happen, it's risky. And there is a possibility for someone using vulnerability against you, which a lot of people are afraid of, which is why they don't do it.
Yeah.
And just knowing that it's a risk, knowing like, you know what, this is my desire. I know there is a possibility that I'm not going to get the answer that I want. And I'm going to do it anyway, because this is the truth. And this is the deeper truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think there's, I mean, maybe you'll speak into it, but there are also ways to create more safety, right? In being vulnerable. And so I hear a lot of people say, oh, I can't share that with my partner, right? I couldn't share that with my partner. My partner's like, they wouldn't understand, or it's not safe, or whatever it is. And it's like, well, we can work on that. We can create an environment and a culture of safety. And we can actually, you don't just have to like blurt out everything that's happening, like, over dinner, or you get to your family Thanksgiving, right? It's like, you can actually have, like, there's some ways to create the space where it feels like there's safety in that connection, that opening up and to be received. And then whatever the answer is, if you've been heard and received in this space, you have more capacity to handle your own emotional reaction to how they receive you, which is really cool. And I want to hear all the things that you have to share about this. So I'm like, yes, this is great.
Love
Vulnerability.
that. Yay, vulnerability. I know if more people could just feel that way about it, things would change.
Things would change.
Yeah. So I guess I can start off by saying, I spoke a little bit about why I started this, when I started this. And the reason why I started it was because I struggled with speaking up. I couldn't even look people in the eye when having a conversation with them. That's how afraid of intimacy I had, or that's how much fear about intimacy I had. So I didn't have deep connections with friends. I had all these friends. I was a part of all these different communities, programs, trainings, networks, parties, Burning Man. And I did all these things, but I didn't have real connections. And I really struggled with sharing because I was really good at making things look good, right? Like my life on Instagram looked really good. My relationship looked really good. I was really good at sharing my perfections, but I would not share what was really happening behind that because I was afraid of judgment, people not liking me, people doubting me. I had all my fears around it. And guess what? The relationships I had also reflected that. So I didn't have the deep friendships that I really want. I would see friends and women have these deep, deep sisterhood connections. And I was like, why don't I have that? I would date, I would get into these relationships. I would meet someone, I would show them all my perfect parts, all the cool parts about me.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3 weeks later, the connection started to fizzle out. Or, slowly, he started seeing someone else, or there just wasn't this connection. And then I got to complain about it. And then I would say, oh, I keep attracting emotionally unavailable men.
Funny how that keeps happening.
Yeah, I wonder why that keeps happening. Or it's my friends. They're not the friends for me because they don't understand me. So I get to blame rather than create.
Wow.
So I used to equate vulnerability with death, actually. Like, oh my God, I will not do that. And if you're watching this, raise your hand or put a yes in the comments if you feel something similar. Like if you're like, oh my gosh, vulnerability feels like it feels like the worst thing to do, or it terrifies me.
Yeah. Wow.
Or maybe it excites you, because fear and excitement, it's a similar sensation in your body. So feel like, what is vulnerability feels like to you? Or if you can think about a time when you were vulnerable and you were really expressive, what was that sensation like in your body?
I love it.
Yeah.
I remember Jamin saying, I don't know where he picked it up from, but somebody said that fear is excitement without the breath. So when you start to feel that fear, it's like, oh, breathe into it and help to alchemize it, help turn it into excitement. And I was like, oh, this is cool. It's fun.
Yeah.
And vulnerability brings all that up.
And it doesn't have to be so scary either. It can also be like, oh my God, exhilarating. I said this thing. Right. So I would always attract these, or always be in these relationships, always like these short relationships, but they would be really deep very quickly. Like we would have sex very quickly. We would open up very quickly. We would jump right into a relationship. And then at some point, things would start to dismantle, fizzle out, because I closed off, right? Because, he was starting to see me too much. Oh, wait, I have to really share about who I am? Oh, fuck no, I'm not doing that. Right? And I would energetically push these people away. And hold on. Okay, so I would energetically push these people away, right? And then it came to this one relationship where I really like this person. We went on a second date to Belize together. That's how intense it was. Like, oh my God, I like you. And we went on a second date into Belize.
Is this what you're supposed to do if you like somebody? Second date is in Belize? I didn't know this. Okay,
that's what I did. That's what I did. That's how, like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, that's how intense I was, but I wasn't willing to be responsible for the intensity that I wanted and created.
Yeah.
So it was like intense, and I thought everything was amazing. And then when we got back a few weeks later, he started seeing someone else. Oof. And I was like, I felt exposed, right? Or I felt like, oh, what happened? What was that? And it was in that moment when I felt like shit, felt sad, looking through all my contacts in my phone and noticing, wow, I don't feel safe enough to call anybody. Or I don't feel I feel scared calling people and telling them that I feel heartbroken
Oh,
because I'm afraid of them judging me and thinking that I'm weak.
yeah.
Because I was so like, I cared about being powerful.
Yeah.
Right. And
How
just
many
skipping
times
it.
has that held us all back from getting help,
Yeah.
from asking for what we need? Like, oh my gosh. I think every single person has been there at some point when you're like, I can't tell anybody this thing.
Right. And you bypass and bulldoze over your emotions and bulldoze over what you feel and what you want, all to look good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. And when I realized that, I'm like, oh, hold on. The reason why I don't have the relationship that I want to have or the connections that I want to have is because I haven't been real. I wasn't real with this guy that I went to Belize with. You know, I mean, yeah, I was like real to a certain extent. I like showed all of my cool parts, but I wasn't interested in him. I didn't ask him questions. I didn't share about my life. I didn't really open up. I just kept this wall here. And also the reasons why I couldn't call a friend was because I wasn't creating the kinds of conversations and the relationships that I wanted to have, which is all possible. So yeah, I mean, if you're watching this, when was a time when you opened up and pulled away because you were scared?
Yeah.
And this could be with friendships, it can be in your relationship, dating. Right? It's funny how the thing that we want the most is the thing that we're afraid of actually sharing.
Yeah.
Or we don't have because we're pushing it away.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I so feel that. And I married an energetic, so he can always sense when that thing is coming up. So like for me, I feel you so much, darling. And like I've had similar patterns in my life. And so it's like being vulnerable can be really effing hard. And yet being married to somebody who's an energetic, right? I'm so skilled at hiding my vulnerability, right? That's what I think. The story in my head is I'm really good at this, right? As if it's something to be proud of. And then and then he'll be like, no, what's really going on in your heart? Like, no, what's really there? If you weren't afraid to tell me what was really going on, I'm like, damn it, how do you know every time? And then when I start leaning into it over many years of practicing this, right? It's like the more you have the safe space to practice, and not everybody has a Jamin to gently tap on your heart. But the more you have the safe space to practice it, the more it's like, oh, okay, fine, I'll share a little bit. Okay. And then the release that comes and the connection that's built. And it's like the opposite of our fears so often over and over again. Again, it's not always that way, right? Sometimes I open it up and then it becomes a shit show. But
Yeah.
but,
Totally.
but more often than not, when we start to learn how we can open up and who we can trust and who we can open up to, and you know, those things, like how do we lean into vulnerability instead of run away from it, we start getting that thing that our heart desires so deeply, which is that human connection, that love and being seen. Like the foundation of everything I do is around the idea that people want to be seen, heard, and loved. So how do we help each other feel seen, heard, and loved? And vulnerability is like the golden key to all of that. So keep going, sister.
Yeah. It's like, it's no matter how amazing your life is, no matter how strong you are, no matter how much you're killing it at work, no matter how many friends you have or how much money you have, right? If you're putting on a facade about it, it will come out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Right? No matter how powerful you think you're even more powerful and influential when you can take down the armor around your heart, open up, and actually be yourself, right? Because you can wear all these hats and all these facades and all these masks, right? And it doesn't allow people to really see you or feel you or hear you.
Yeah.
When you're approaching someone in your relationship with this facade.
Yeah.
Like, or especially I work with a lot of women, independent women, right? Like, oh, I'm independent. I can't tell this guy, I can't tell my partner how I really feel because then he's going to walk all over me. Actually, your power is when you can soften and reveal and open, and it's not always going to be pretty. No. So right. I love that you said it. And sometimes it's a shit show.
Yep.
And the power is cleaning it up, right?
Yes.
How to have those cleanup conversations.
Yeah. So all of this sounds really nice. You're like, all you have to do, guys, everybody got this. So your big note for today is all you gotta do is be vulnerable. Go do it. All right. Okay. But no. So how do we actually do this thing that terrifies most of us? Like what do we do?
So I'm going to teach you 5 steps, or talk about 5 steps that I help my clients with when it comes to being vulnerable and dealing with what comes up when you are vulnerable too.
Love it.
Right? So my first step first I just want to say vulnerability is not comfortable. Right? So I'm sure Ari has created this, and I hope that you can see that if you're on or if you're watching the replay, this is a brave space for your vulnerability, and this experience is just going to be interactive, and you can these are just frameworks from my experience and frameworks that have worked for me. So everything I say is an invitation. So I just want to say that first.
I love invitations.
Yeah. So my first step for you is getting clear on your desires. Having exactly what you want. Visualize owning your desires. And give your desires permission and approval, right? So, because who here wants to have more freedom in being themselves? Woo. And who wants to have deep and fulfilling relationships?
Yeah.
So it's really important to start looking at what you desire. Right?
How do you give yourself permission and approval for this?
Permission and approval. No matter, your desire can be big, small. I invite you to start small, right? Create a desire box. What do you want to put in your desire box? It can be weird, silly, quirky, sexy, everything that you desire.
And this goes for everybody, whether you're in a relationship or you are not in a relationship right now. Anybody can create a desire box.
Desire box, right? And when you create this desire box, I want you to imagine like feeling free and empowered to be vulnerable in your desires, right? Picture like waking up in the morning and feeling safe to be you. So who's brave enough to share a small desire that they have?
Well, since we're on Zoom, I'm going to keep us here. Because we're projecting into Facebook, and so they won't get to easily interact. So that's why you're getting mostly me. but I play along. I play for all the things.
What's a small desire that you have?
Let me just check in with myself. A small desire that I have. I want to create more balance with my dance schedule. I love being in my body and dancing. And I noticed that sometimes I have this like internal battle of like, if I go dancing too much, right? What does that mean? It's funny, these stories we hold, right? And dancing, I do partner dancing, right? And the partner dancing always happens late at night in Bali. So and I put my kids to bed at 7:15, and then I would need to go, which then I am potentially quote unquote being a bad wife, if I'm going out dancing. And look at my throat is even closing up even thinking about this. And it's like, how many, and this has been going on all my life. I've been dancing for 34 years now, 34 years. But this is like a piece of my journey and a piece of like the stories that my husband and I have of like, what is the right number for the balance between self-care and passion and love and relationship and being in that balance, right? And while Jamin, gives me blessings and freedom, there's still a lot of like weight and story there. So for me, I'm like, what makes me uncomfortable? What I desire is just feeling some balance in that and not thinking about it every week of like, what's the perfect ratio right now?
Yeah. So you desire to feel freedom in your dance schedule.
Yes. Dance and family schedule, that balance. Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. And for anyone who's watching the replay, if you're watching right now, give your desires approval, like full approval, and notice where you're like, is this, I don't know if I should say this or if it's the right thing, if it's too much, if it's weird, if like, does it make me a good girl? Does it make me a bad boy? Like notice it, just get really clear about it. Like say, oh, I desire to take off my good girl mask, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever it is, just really like go for it and take your time with creating your desire box.
Yes. And I'll mention for those of you who don't know me, I just chose a super vanilla topic because that's what's coming up for me right now. But those who don't know me, I am also super weird and have had some pretty amazing and extreme life experiences, especially around sexuality and relationshiping and all the things. So it's funny. I'm like, oh my gosh, if you don't know me yet and you just heard, they'd be like, oh, that's so sweet. She wants to have the balance between like dancing and being a good wife. That sounds so nice. But if you really like, if you heard me answer that question, 7 years ago or something, it'd be like, oh my God, like I deeply desire to be able to let my kinky self out, to just be fully to fully embrace these crazy taboo things I keep thinking about and that make me so turned on. How do I go there? Right. And that has been a huge piece of my journey that, now is so I'm like, yeah, you can hear me talk about the craziest shit on podcasts. But it's just funny to see like you don't know what's there. And for me, edgy right now is balance between self-care and being a mom and a wife. But edgy was also super like dirty, extreme, blah, 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 it at a different point in time. So whatever it is, without judging yourself, I think what you just said, that acceptance of like, give yourself permission to whatever it is, it's good enough. It's more than enough. It's you, and you are enough.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, put down your dirty desires in there too. Like, I love that you said something about being taboo, right? It's a fear. It's a fear to be taboo, right? What will people think?
Yeah.
And the more, just like Ari started owning it, the more I own my taboo, the more people can actually see me and feel me. Yeah. I struggled with this actually with leadership before because I post a lot. I'm very active on social media. I post on Instagram, and I was leading facilitator trainings, and I talked a lot about leadership, and I was really afraid of talking about my relationships online, because I was also, I've navigated open relationships for 5 years. I did weird kinky tantra trainings and like did all these like really taboo things that I never really talked about online, because I'm like, how do I say that someone, tied me up and did this thing? Like, I don't know how to write about that, right? Because I was afraid of what if no one will take me seriously as a leader.
Yeah.
So that's also another incredible thing to start owning and looking at, is where are you afraid of being taboo, and where could you actually own those desires and own your expression?
Yes.
Yeah, and actually people love me more the more authentic and vulnerable and real I am about who I am, because it allows people to see me versus like me being like really vanilla, which and it's okay. And also, if you want to be vanilla, be vanilla, right? But it's like if you're doing it to cover up an inauthenticity, people feel that, and talking about vulnerability, where could you? This leads into our next step. Where can you shed?
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
there's all sorts of layers. And
I
mean, and I think it's that fear. Another way of saying it is also the fear of being judged, right? Like the taboo, the fear of being judged so much. And this is really beautiful exercise for me as I'm going through it, because it was so in my face before, right? Like before, when it was like coming out of the closet, leaving Amazon and talking about how it's so like what you do is so edgy and, like outing yourself. But I found that it's the same thing. It really, like, people felt so much more connected to me when I was vulnerable. But now leading to this place where I was like, oh, it's so innocent and sweet. But I'm seeing the taboo and the fear of judgment underneath that, right? Like the pressure of being a mom, the pressure of being in a relationship, and how are you doing it? So it's really cool to just be looking at, like, it's very similar. It's like almost sinister. Like this underlying, the story is almost always the same, of good enough or not good enough, or is it safe, or like I can't show it, or I can't do it. All these limiting beliefs, they're going to show up for everybody in a different way. It doesn't matter how. What matters is that it's hitting you, right? It's hitting your heart in some way. You can feel the weight.
Yeah. And the biggest thing in this is approval. Having approval and permission for everything.
I love it.
Even when you're crying, when you feel sad, when you're feeling like, oh, I feel this emotion, I feel this sensation in my body, could you just give it approval? Instead of, because the thing that hypes us all up is resisting it. Oh no, I can't feel that way.
Yeah.
So
when you say, I just want to clarify, when you say give it approval, so like internally you're saying it's okay for me to feel this.
Yeah. Or like reframe your language. Say, oh, instead of saying, I'm sorry that I'm crying, or I can't believe that I'm feeling this way. Say, I love that I have emotions about this right now.
Yeah.
I love that. I really want to have a better dance balance, a better like work-life dance balance, and feel permission to go out and dance whenever I want. Like, I love that it brings me sensation, like just bringing approval to it.
Yeah. I love this. Okay. So step 1, we made our desires list, or our desires box. Step 2, we did approval.
Step 2 is more of, I call it peel and reveal.
Okay.
But so that could be, actually, we can add that as a bonus step, approval, because you can't peel and reveal without giving yourself permission first. So cool. Once you give yourself approval, then you peel and reveal.
Peel and reveal.
Peel and reveal. Now you have these desires, you have approval, right? And now where could you peel back layers you've been holding on to? Right?
Give me an example.
What's something that you want and you have been holding back, and what's stopping you from having it? Right? I can give you an example. For me, I this is I'll give you a new example. This is something that's very recent in my life. I love freedom in my relationships, and my ex and I were together, and we were very open, and we gave each other a lot of freedom and space in our relationship. And deep down, I really wanted a deep partnership with him. I wanted his attention. I wanted his full attention, and I wanted to be in a monogamous relationship at times. Sometimes I really loved our relationship, but I deeply wanted more love and attention from him. And I was afraid of asking for that because I thought that he wouldn't love me anymore, or he wouldn't love our relationship if it wasn't the way that it was. So we broke up earlier this year in January. And once I processed that, and then I met someone new, and now I'm in a new relationship, and we're monogamous. And what I realized is that in this relationship, I really want love and safety and connection and partnership. And it doesn't mean that things won't change, because that'll be our next pillar. I'll talk about creation and relationship by design. It doesn't mean that those forms won't change, but what I really was afraid of expressing to my partner was that I really wanted his attention, and I wanted a monogamous and deep partnership with him. I was afraid of asking for
that. That's beautiful. And you asked for it. And now you get to explore that desire together and see what you want to create.
Yeah.
So the first part was having to own it and express it, reveal it.
Yeah. Revealing it. And this came from giving myself approval for wanting it. Right. And then it came from asking for it and being okay with the no.
Yeah.
Right. Like my partner that I'm with now, he's very, handsome, and he's successful, and, he could probably be in an open relationship if he wanted to, or if he can like be with another woman if he wanted to. But I asked him for his attention, and I just want him. Right. And like that's the relationship and agreement that we created together. It wasn't coming from an expectation, because that's what a lot of relationships start off with too. Like, oh, aren't we just supposed to be together? Or like, when you don't have these vulnerable conversations, right? What do you want? What are your expectations?
Yeah.
Then that's when all the inauthenticities get to start building up. And when you can get authentic about where you've been inauthentic and uncover layers that you've been hiding behind, taking off the mask, the good girl mask, the perfectionist mask, right? The ego.
Yeah.
That's actually covering up your deep desire for love and intimacy.
I think one more thing that you said that was really powerful is, letting go of the assumptions and expectations, but also letting go of demands. Like, you made it very clear, it was a request that you're coming with. So if you're creating a relationship, letting go of, it's not a moo-moo. This is not a one size fits all. We all have a model, like, this is what a relationship is, just slip it on, right? It's like, get rid of that idea. This is your blank canvas with whoever you're with, however long you've been together. It doesn't matter. You can create from today, from this moment on, you can create whatever you want. But let go of the expectations and the assumptions and the demands. You figured out what was important to you. You came forward revealing that. You made a request, and then they get to decide, is that for them or not? And then you guys get to decide, how do you want to navigate this with all the information that's now here in this present moment that could shift at any point in time, and then you can have another conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I can also shift. I can say, you know what? I feel really, really safe in this container with you, and I have a desire to explore with someone else. That's a whole that's possible, right? I could also
Everything is
have that's a
possible.
vulnerable. Everything is possible, what Jamin says all the time. I love it. It's true. It's looking at it like that, like what is possible in my relationship right now, right? So, and that can, and then that's leading up to the next pillar. But before we go into that, um, an exercise I want you to take with you in this is write down what's something I haven't told someone in a long time, or what's something I haven't said that I want to say.
Hmm.
What's something I don't want people to know about me? And yeah, go and really just go in on it. Write it out. Express it. You don't have to share this with someone else, but it would be probably really brave if you did. But and you can even create that with a partner, with a date that you go on, right? Because you create and we'll go into creation, but could you create a conversation like this instead of having surface level conversations? What do you care about? What's important to you? What's something you haven't told anyone in a long time?
Hmm.
And that creates intimacy and connection.
I love it.
Yeah. And what challenges come up when it comes to peeling off your mask? So the next pillar is relationship by design. This is where you get to create context. You get to create containers. You get to create the connections that you want to have. You get to create boundaries for your heart. That's from the heart, because not everyone deserves your vulnerability.
Yes.
So yeah, it's edgy. This is edgy work to share your heart, to open up, to peel and reveal. And not everyone deserves your vulnerability either, right? So until you have that, that's why it's really important to have healthy boundaries for yourself, right? Like what do you desire? What do you care about? What are your values, right? And and then once you have a conversation with someone, or if you're in a relationship with someone, or you want to be in a relationship, and until you can have these kinds of conversations, then you can open up and express what's really there for you, what you've been holding back, what you care about, right? And you get to create these containers, right? You get to create these relationships. You get to create these new forms of relating, right? Like my partner and I, we've been together for 2 months, not long. And I'm going back to the States next month, not for good. I'm coming back to Bali, but I'm going for a month. And I plan on having a conversation. Like we're going to have a relationship conversation. And it might not change. We might have the same relationship completely, but it's just like creating these opportunities for deeper connection, like, and asking, what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
What do you
And
want?
and it doesn't have to take
Yeah.
leaving on a jet plane to do this, right?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Like you can have a monthly check-in. You can have a quarterly check-in of just, hey, how are we doing? What is the state of our union? Like right now, like how are things? What are we loving? I like to do roses and thorns. It's like, what are the things that I love? What are the roses that smell so sweet and are really brightening my day? And what are the thorns that are just kind of poking me still? Like, and what do we want to shift that's not working? And the thorn could be we've stagnated. There's a lot of people here because things have just like it's like meh. The relationship, we're in a relationship, it's meh. We are really good at our routine. We can watch Netflix like bosses, like, right? It's like, bam. And now what? And so instead of waiting for something to happen, instead of waiting for some sort of, God forbid, catastrophe to happen, or for something dramatic to happen, or waiting for somebody's got to go, right? There's no big event. You can just say, let's just do
Right.
this. Let's just have this conversation of, are we currently living the life we want to live? Is this the relationship we want to have? And if it's not, how do we co-create something more awesome?
Yeah. Yeah. Having a weekly check-in, a monthly check-in. My ex and I did that every month. We sat down and we had our check-in every month. And it actually made our relationship sexier.
Yes,
It
does.
created intimacy. It created depth in our relationship. And we get to ask the questions, how's our sexual connection? What do you want? What's something that, has been left unsaid? Do you have space to be, do you have space to be yourself? Do you feel like you have time do you have time to yourself? Right. And if you're not in a relationship, having these kinds of questions, asking each other, being genuinely curious about the other person and their life creates intimacy, right? It actually, like, it takes the guard down, or it takes down the wall around your heart, right? And actually allows someone, like, wow, oh my God, this woman is seeing me and she's interested in me. Oh my God, this makes her so sexier, right? Like, that's what's possible with vulnerability and curiosity, and having these kinds of conversations, and even completion conversations. Is there a relationship in your life? Is there a relationship where, could be cleaned up, right? Where could you clean up? Where could you, maybe you want an apology. Where could you apologize? Or where are you hurt and you want an apology, right? I'm sure, I mean, I have a ton of them, and this is like, I have these conversations all the time, right? Like, Ari and I we had a cleanup conversation once, and it was just like, and it brought us closer. And like, think about a relationship in your life that has some, it's fine, it might be fine, but it has some, like, stuck energy behind it, or some, like, there's something that was left incomplete, right? And there's some resentment, or there's some anger, right? It's there. Could you clean that up with that person? Could you go to that person, like, hey, I noticed that I'm still feeling sensation about, since we last talked. I noticed I'm still feeling some residue from our last conversation. And I just wanted to, open up a space, and, really own my part, and really own where I could have been more, clear, and this is the impact, share the impact, share, where you could own what you can own, be responsible for what you could own, share an impact, clean up, apologize for where you could apologize, right? Share when you've been hurt. And make sure you're not, like, coming at somebody and saying, you hurt me, right? Say, I felt hurt. Reveal, peel, take off the mask.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it also really brought to mind, I think there are some people who have a habit of creating relationships that have, I'm going to call them hooks. So one of my clients, she calls them pickle jars. I have former lovers who are like pickle jars. They're always there. I keep them on a shelf. If I need one, they're always there, and they're always ready. They're always ready, right? And I've got this whole cabinet full of pickle jars that I can choose from when I want, because I know they're always waiting for me. Or, they're former lovers, people who are maybe not ever were lovers, but they will give me that time and attention and affirmation when I need it, and they're just waiting. And it's like, is that serving you? And if not, this kind of peel and reveal conversation can be really powerful in leading to a relation shift, right? And maybe those relationships are not serving you anymore. And so whether you're in partnership or you're not, are there ties you have to people in the past that are still, you can feel the weight when you even think about that person? You're like, oh yeah, I can feel that there's something there that doesn't feel like it nourishes me and energizes me, and it probably doesn't nourish them, right? It just feels kind of like needy or usey or something. And so just thinking about, are there relationships that need to be cleaned up, even from this state, where you just need to just take a deep breath and lean into the vulnerability and say, this isn't serving me. I need to let this go. Let me own me and own my role in this relationship of keeping you hanging or keeping you sitting on the shelf, or choosing to be on your shelf and say, I don't want this anymore. This isn't serving me. And it's funny how many people I know are in relationships with one person, but they still keep their pickle jars ready, right? And it's not to say that pickle jar relationships are bad or good. It's not my place to judge. But what I want to say is, if it's not nourishing you, if when I'm even saying this, you're feeling something like oh, yeah, that's me. Like I'm doing that. Maybe it's time to look at that. Like, is this a place you can lean in and you want to start to do that peel and reveal of like, ooh, that's not clean. I need to clean it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes you being responsible for the relationships that you want to create. So when I started Vulnerable AF, it took me being willing to be responsible for the kinds of relationships and connections that I wanted to have with people, and not blaming them and not being like, well, it's because he isn't emotionally available. It's because she can't, take what take who I am or understand who I am, like whatever. It's actually being responsible for the kind of relationship that you want. So that's what relationship by design is. You get to create the space.
I love it.
Yeah. And the next one is embodied courage. So now that you have this, now could you embody courage? Like, because if nothing happens, if nothing changes, what will continue to happen? Right? Who and what qualities do you need to embody to attract and keep the relationships that you want to have? And this is going to take you having courage and embodying that courage, not just like this intellectual courage, not like, oh yeah, I know I need to be brave and courageous. It's like really, really owning where you could be more honest and authentic about where you've been inauthentic, where you can clean up, right? Because that's how people can see you and feel you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And the last step is embodied desire. Now that you have courage, now embody your desires. This is where you can cultivate and share them, put them into action. Find a relationship that you want to improve on by using these tools, right? And what would being vulnerable create as a win for you here? What's the best case scenario and what's the worst case scenario? And I really invite you to be happy or let go of expectations. And understand that vulnerability is risky. It's risky, and your willingness to be uncomfortable and brave and courageous and honest and transparent with the genuine curiosity and generosity for another person is what makes you more brave, right? And can actually allow people to see you and feel you, right? When I hold back, and then when I do these steps on myself and I share it with someone in my life, share something I've been holding back, withholding, and inauthenticity, then I always hear back from that person that I'm sharing with, or energetically, I'm so happy you said that. I'm so relieved that you said that because I couldn't feel you before, or I felt hurt by this, and I'm so happy that you shared this with me. And that's the power of vulnerability, as using it as your superpower and greatest strength.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this so much.
Oh.
Woo. And I can see how it applies to both to romantic partnerships, to any type of relationship with your kids, relationship with your parents, relationship with your roommates, whatever it may be, like this is life.
Girlfriends.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really invite you to lean into friendships, lean into your relationships. I know it's scary, right? And you created all these reasons why you shouldn't lean into friendships, or you shouldn't lean on this person, right? Oh, my part, if it's your partner and you're like, no, I want to be really independent, strong, and look a certain way. I really invite you to lean in.
Yes.
Lean into friendship, share, reveal, peel back, own, really, really lean in, because that is the power of connection and intimacy. And that's how you can actually create more connection in your life.
One of my favorite invitations for doing this that I have almost all of my clients do is it's actually a parenting tool. It's called Listening Partnerships, and I'll put a link to it in the thing. And it's like the video is all about how to do this as a parent, but the tool is the same for everyone. And basically my invitation is, while we're in this coaching container together, while we're working together for these next few weeks, then what I want you to do is I want you to go choose someone. Just go choose someone that's not your beloved, you are not involved with in that way. It can be your bestie. It can be the barista at Starbucks you don't know at all. Right? It could be somebody you see online that you just feel connected to, that you don't know, but you want to get to know more. And what I want you to do is set up a listening partnership where each week you're setting up a phone call for about 22 minutes. So you get to say hi, and then you set a timer, and then you get to just vent for 10 minutes and lean into that vulnerability and what's there, and just practice using your voice and practice speaking your truth. And they're just going to listen. All they do is listen. They can make it, yep, wow, right? Those kinds of sounds, but we're not looking to solve anything. We're just being heard and being witnessed where we are. And then the timer goes off, we say thank you, and we switch roles, and that person gets this turn. And then the timer goes after 10 minutes, and we close the call and just say thank you, see you next week. And that's it. Just a chance to be witnessed and heard, and it's okay to be in that space. And so I invite everybody out there, if this is like new, even if it's not new, it takes practice. Everything, I feel like one of the main words that I've gotten from this week from every single person is like, practice. It takes practice. You're not just going to wake up because you listened. We're going to end this call in the next couple minutes, and we're not going to be like, okay, you heard it. Now you got it. Go be vulnerable. Good luck. Right? It's like, this takes practice. You gotta lean in. It is. It's like the gym. Being in a relationship is like going to the gym. Being with yourself is like going to the gym. We gotta take care of ourselves, and it takes training so we can actually do the heavy lifting. Yeah. With ease and grace and look sexy doing it.
One. Yeah, exactly. I love it. Yeah, and you can also, and even in with that same tool, if you can create it however you want to. You can say, hey, every week we're just gonna listen to what's alive, or let's share. You can make it sexy with a date or a partner. Like, let's share our fears and desires with each other every day. Let's share withholds. Let's share a brag or something that we're like celebrating about ourselves, right? And that's something you can create that, and it's sexy. And like, because vulnerability also doesn't have to be so heavy all the time either.
Yes.
Right. It can also be fun and creative, and you get to create that, and you get to practice and use everything. Everything we do is practice in this life. Every relationship you have is a practice. You see it as a practice, right? Like, oh, I get to practice communication. I get to practice vulnerability. I get to practice, new tools, and like just see it that way. So I love it.
So good. Yeah. And what you just said reminded me, one more tool I'm going to just throw out there. The Gottman Institute, the world's leading researchers on couples, who I love, 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 love. They had this invitation once where they're like, okay, every day I invite you and your beloved or beloveds to get together and share, how do you bring me joy? How do you add joy to my life? Like, what am I grateful for in you, right? And what am I afraid to tell you? Ooh, these are big and they're beautiful. And it's like, we all hold these things. And it could be like some mornings when sometimes we do this and I'm like, we get to Jamin and I do this often. And one thing I'm afraid to tell you, it's like my I love it and hate it. I like love it because I know I'm gonna feel better after I say it, but I hate it because I'm like waiting. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna do the thing that I say. And it could be something as simple as, I hate to tell you, but I went to your favorite bakery and I didn't get you, and I bought you this cookie, and then I decided I wanted to eat it, so I ate it. And I didn't want to tell you, but right? It's like it could be anything, but it's like I'm holding this weight of guilt or whatever it is, and then I lean into it. Like, I'm gonna be vulnerable and let you know, like. And then like the response is usually like, "Baby, you thought of me. That's so sweet, and thank you for telling me." Like, yeah. Oh, so what is
Yeah, it just takes the weight off, even if it's
yeah.
small. It doesn't have to be a big withhold,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's a fear. It's like, oh my God, I can't tell her that. It's like, it could be so little.
Could be so little, but leaning into it is the big thing, right? And just practice leaning in.
Yeah.
So as we're closing, I do want to say that, like, start with the littles. Start with the little things. You don't need to, I mean, you might be inspired by like, oh my God, now I can finally reveal my life secret, my big dark secret. Trust your intuition about who is safe to share that with, and don't just go dump it over a dinner party, right? It's like, choose your setting, choose your time, choose somebody you feel safe with. If you need to tell somebody specific but you're not ready to tell them, are there people you could practice with? As you're seeing if this person you want to tell, if there's small things you could test the safety with to be vulnerable. Can you tell them something that's not super deep and just see how they hold that vulnerability for you, how they respond to that, right? And can you, if they're not even listening, can you invite them into that space? Can you say, hey, I'd like to share something with you. Can you just listen? You don't need to problem solve. Can you just listen to me? And invite them, tell them what you want instead of assuming they're going to know to just listen. Okay. So here's just some tips as we're leaning into this vulnerability. What a juicy, juicy conversation. Veronika, you are amazing. Anything else you wanted to add as we wrap up?
I was just going to share where people can find me.
Oh yeah, I'm asking you that in a second. Anything else about vulnerability?
Anything else I want to share? Also give people permission and approval for being where they are. Right? Sometimes when we get into this work about vulnerability and intimacy and communication, we think, oh, well, I'm going to dump all these new tools that I learned on you and you need to listen, right? Practice sharing, see and notice, can this person hold this? And ask, hey, how was that hearing? How was that for you? What was that like listening to that?
Yeah.
And notice that and give them permission to show up, give them permission to like lean into you. And then keep like peeling and revealing, right? And give people permission for being in their process too, right? So it's really exciting to learn all these tools, and then you like want to share it with everyone, you want to do everything, and know that it's an uncomfortable conversation for most people, right? And you have to, that's why it's really, really important to like create the containers, create context, to be really, really clear, like say, hey, I just did this relationship remix summit and I learned this new tool, and I have a desire to have this, to clean up something in our relationship. Can we do that together? Okay, great. And then like, get permission and approval and like, and do it from a place that's authentic to you. Right? Not from a place of, I want inauthenticity of actually wanting to test them or change them or do anything different. So yeah, that's another tip I can give you. Permission.
Dang, Willis.
It's more permission.
Yeah, you are just filled with wisdom bombs. This was such a juicy conversation today, Veronika, and I am like, I've got like butterflies and fire in my stomach. I'm like, yeah, here we go. This is so good. So thank you. This was amazing. And how do people follow you? How do people get involved with your work? How do people ask you more questions? You can post in the group if you have questions specifically. She's in there. She's monitoring this. And Veronika's got awesome work going on. So how do we follow you?
Thank you. Yes, I'm really active on social media. So if you want to find me on Instagram at Veronika Kaulinis or at Vulnerable AF. You could send me a message. Tell me what you heard from this. Tell me what you got, what shifted for you. You can find, I lead workshops and I lead programs. So you can find me on Instagram. You can find my programs on there. I'm leading a free workshop next week. So if you're interested in that, let me know. And yay.
So
So
good.
yeah,
And
message
I'll
me.
be posting this recording with links to follow you, links to find you. People can please comment below. We'd love to hear what your takeaways were. And we can share with each other, right? So this is really juicy, juicy, juicy stuff. So Veronika, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Such a joy to get
Carrie.
more time with you. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will see you soon. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.